know. Can you see my studio? Can you see behind me, Harley?
That's phenomenal.
No, but look at it's on the easel. It's below it. That's what I was struggling with. I have a sketch that you did in one of our midnight sessions early on.
Oh my God!
And that has a reflective glass surface. So it was giving me a pain. And then on the easel is a I don't know if you can see it, but it's an oil painting that I found along with a million of your books about Marilyn Monroe at the gallery in Santa Fe, which I love. I saw it and I thought, you know, it's just, I need another piece of Harley in my studio. So that's sitting in here.
I have very few of my own. Well, I have very few of my own that are framed. I have a few, but, you know, most of them are kind of in piles, unframed in the corner somewhere. Some real unusual ones, let me tell you.
So are mine.
Am I allowed to just run away for a second?
Oh, sure, of course.
I'll show you. Here's an example of what I've got. I did for magazine covers. As a for instance.
Pull it up a little bit. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good to put out at the end of October.
Yeah, we're going to do that for Halloween. But I've got hundreds of pieces like that.
So first of all, I should probably say it's such a pleasure to talk to you, Harley.
My pleasure.
Harley Brown, the famous Harley Brown.
A little older,
the
not wiser.
Harley Brown. The wonderful Harley Brown.
Yeah. Well, that's nice to hear. It is.
It's true. It's true. I mean, I think I met you the first year I started going to the school, and maybe I couldn't get into that class, but the next year I was able to, and then I haunted you until that restraining order kicked in. And you wouldn't let me come back.
Was there a restraining order?
I think you put it out, Harley. No, I'm kidding. I'm making.
Well, I hope so.
I felt like I was stalking you, however, every year.
No, just fellow artists.
Yeah.
And loving what we do, and the spirit is there, the joy and the spirit. I think that's so important. And if there's anything that keeps somebody young, like all my buddies, friends. God, I was 10, 15 years younger than my art friends in Tucson. Dick Briers, he died a few years ago. He was 101.
Wow.
All of them, Tom Hill, he's 97, 98. He's still going at it. They're all in their 90s. A lot of the guys I knew are in the 90s and as healthy and as good. And their brains are 100%, you know. My brain is kind of always... You know, it's I forget this and that and the other thing, but art has kind of kept my confidence up.
Yeah. Well, I think we forget the things we don't want to remember, don't we?
Well, there is that. And I thank God for Mother Nature in allowing us that, because there are some things that need to be put away, put in the grave.
Yeah. But tell me, I know how I got to the school, but how did you get to start teaching at the school?
I think it was, well, you know, I had been getting a lot of schooling from the likes of Bob Lockheed and Gustav Rehberger in New York and so on in England. And I was good for, you know, I knew Bill Reese, and he phoned me up once and he said, you know, they've been passing knowledge on to us, and it's time we passed it on to others. And he said, there's a Scottsdale Artists School. And my God, you know, right away I signed up and said, okay. And that was the first lesson I ever did, was there, that school, and those poor first students. I don't know if they knew it, but I had never taught before. And I was learning right on the job, right from the first, now what do I do? Now what do I do? But by the third day, I got into it. And I started doing my, you know, so, okay, now start listening to me, damn it.
Well, I do remember there were times when you would just whack that model stand, not the model, but the model stand, just to get everybody out of our stupor.
Yeah,
and,
that's
whack
right.
it with a ruler, you know, or something loud, make a loud noise somehow. And it worked, I'll tell you. you do end up sometimes in a stupor, and you're not present when you're drawing. And I think that's the main thing one of the main things you taught us is to stay present.
Totally. And well, you're not, you've got it right, and you got to keep alert. I know that when I was learning from these people, they knew if my mind was wandering, and like Gustav Rehberger. And I saw him 10 years later, back in the Art Students League. I saw him 10 years later. He says, where did you come back? You're still making that same mistake as you made 10 years ago, he told me. And he used to love to use me as a kind of, I guess, a guinea pig. And he would kind of make corrections and so on. But the corrections that Bob Lockheed made when we were drawing live animals, and he'd say, now, Harley, this is when I was in my 30s, I think, somewhere in there. And I had stopped drinking and all of the, smoking and swearing and all that. And I had nothing but time in my hands because I was not invited to parties anymore. And at that time, Bob Lockheed phoned, we were doing animals out in the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia and from Life. And I remember I got a real good lesson from Bob when he came up to one of my pictures that I was doing. And I thought he's going to come up and give me praise. And he came up and started working on it. And the stuff he did was phenomenal, showing the shapes of shadows and so on, and how design and shapes work with the anatomy. And this was the first time I really kind of got those things together on a three-dimensional life way. And that was a turning point. In fact, it was such a turning point that when he left, it was such a shock to me that I had to go behind and I felt some tears. And I didn't know if I could handle this. By God, the next day I couldn't get up early enough to get some more of it. It was a real turning point. And with all of that, several years of that, and that's when Bill Rees phoned and said, we want you down at the Scottsdale Artists School. And by God, down I came. And
well, I know a lot of your students felt the same way with lessons that you gave them, and how you simplified things, but you presented things in a simple way, but you didn't, I don't know, it came across to those of us who were new at the time and could understand these ideas because they were simple, which it really is. I mean, it's not easy, but it's simple, as they say.
But it is. You're right. There are some of the great basics of art are really, you can grasp them. People think that there's confusion in it. It's not like chemistry or things like that. There's some really, I can get a person drawing in a day by just using some good logic with forms of light and shadow, the shapes of light and shadow and so on. And, but, that's the beauty about that school is that to me, is that if I wander on here too much, please tell me.
No. I want to know all about what you think about the school.
Like the likes of Bettina Stank, some of the teachers and artists that came there are, to me, they were legendary. And to have 1 week with one of those instructors, that's why I love that school. It'll be like going to a drama class with Meryl Streep for a week, or having Ernest Hemingway or Agatha Christie giving a week's worth of, they're the very best in the world coming to the Scottsdale School.
And when we started, we were in the little upstairs office building. I don't know if you remember.
I remember that well.
Upstairs office building. And then when we moved to this new school, which is now almost 30 years ago or 25 years ago, it's such a beautiful environment to be in too. It really is great. School means everything to me. In fact, the drawing behind you, Harley, was done in one of those classes. I was in that class. Where that model painted in the drawing behind you. Yeah, she was a model from the Renaissance Festival.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was in that class, so it brings back a lot of good memories.
Oh, gosh. I think, and I only think of positive things. And of course, we had night classes too. We kind of let it go into the night. But, when people talk about that, and some of the artists that came to my classes were professionals. And I think it's great that professional artists come to those classes. it's like when, you know, the Call to Tucson 7, when I had all those great artists, friends of mine, you know, I won't mention all their names, but they're world noted names.
Yeah.
And there are three of us left, Tom Hill, Howard Terpning, and myself. But we would get together and draw together. We not learn from each other, but be inspired with each other. And I think that's what, I think all artists should come to that school for the purpose of learning a lot, but being inspired, being with each other.
You know, I always felt, you know, sometimes people can feel intimidated if they don't feel like they're good enough, or they're not advanced enough to come to class. And I always felt that, you know, when there were people much better than me in the class, I not only had the teacher to learn from, I had all the other people painting next to me that I could glean from and steal and sneak and, you know,
perfectly
snoop
said,
and all that stuff. So, you know, I think that you just have to, if you want to learn, you know, you just want to learn, you know. And I remember that hunger for learning that I was so able to get from that school and from teachers like you that were so willing to give everything.
Well, you've got it right, and I've discovered that, and this I've heard from Bob Lockheed when he was just before he died, we never stopped learning, and it's.
Tell me, from your mouth to God's ears, for me, that's my fear, is that I'm at the top of my curve, at the top of my learning curve.
No, we learn right to the end. We learned. Dick Breyer's 100 years old. He said, "I'm still learning things." And
I think Goya said the same thing.
It's always that way, the learning, and it's the same with. I mean, if you're on the stage with somebody acting, you know, if you have Sir Laurence Olivier and you're watching him, but I can always think back of some of the people that I've met. And God, it was a glorious period. A lot of them are gone now. And it was I thought, a glorious period that I happened to be so lucky to have gotten into it at the right time. And I've kind of eased on out probably at the right time. And when I think about it, gosh, well, I really, so when I think about the teaching, that was a great time. And I would learn a lot during those moments. With the others, with the students, I would learn. But the beauty of all of that is that, well, and another thing I want to tell you, another thing is that I learned not to be envious or have jealousies. And I learned that by being with that gang, the cowboy artists, and the way back in the NAWA, the National Academy of Western Art. The fact that we were so thrilled with one of our buddies in the art world would get an award. We didn't get it, but they got it. But we knew that maybe down the road we'd get ours. The thing is that it wasn't a put on. It was a real, there was no envy if somebody else got the award, some kind of a thing, honor thing. And that was something else that I kind of learned very young, you know, that whatever happens in the world, you're still yourself. Nobody can take that from you. And you also, sometimes a teacher will say, well, I don't want to be drawing in front of you simply because I don't want you to have to start or feel that you're duplicating me. A lot of the teachers would say that. The fact is that I mean, if you're going to learn to do a heart operation, you want to see a doctor doing it in front, you know, so you can see how it's done. And when I saw my first instructor do a drawing in front of the class, that was another moment where tears came down my cheeks to actually see it happening. Yeah. And you know,
even seeing mistakes happen is wonderful, exactly. Because you see how they get out of those mistakes, how it's not a block, it's not a wall, it's just you have to find your way out of that mistake. And that was such a revelation to me I never saw you make a mistake, Harley.
Well,
others.
of course, I would fake it up. I'd tell a joke or something, and people laugh, and while they were laughing, I'd fix it. You know, there's the fact of us being human. But that school, there was one time I did a 1 month long workshop, hoping that the same students, it was the only time that was ever done. And it was 1 month. And all the students were supposed to be there for 4 weeks. Well, half of them were gone after the first 2 weeks. The only ones that hung in were the older bunch, an old World War II vet and so on. And they hung in there. And at the very last day, I was giddy and I didn't know my own name.
Yeah, and, well, those were marathon. I mean, those were, you know, Herculean effort.
Yeah, they were.
For everybody, not only for you, but for everybody. They were Herculean. I mean, I remember I think I lasted 3 weeks on one, but I'm pretty sure I didn't go 4.
Well, because it's so intense. I mean, we can be in our studio and then go out and get a coffee and that, but these are class things where you're really involved minute by minute. And so it's a little different than being in your studio and take time off when you need it and so on. And that's what I'm doing. My dad said way back, he said, and I started drawing when I was 7. And he said, the day will come. And of course, when you're teenagers, you don't think your parents are very bright because they're not clued in. And it turned out that they were bright all that time. Yeah, but he said the day will come when he said, like me, he said, and he was in his 70s, late 70s, he says, you'll start to appreciate things around you. Like he said, you'll smell the roses and look at the mountaintops of the snow and so on. And that's what I'm kind of doing now. I'm drawing. It takes a little longer now to draw a picture. Before, when you had to get 40 pictures or paintings, whatever, for an art show, you know, you just, you work 12, 14 hours a day. And when you're young, of course, you can do it. When you're older, you know, you've got to be a little.
Got to pace yourself.
You have to pace yourself, yeah. But, you know, I know this is about the school and I should be, but I think I have to say, for artists that are interested and want to get into the art world, and those who are professionals, the best place to go on the planet Earth, and I say this with sincerely, and nobody's coaxing me or anything, the Scottsdale School is the best, this artist school is the best place to find out what the hell you need to know and how you can make yourself become a better self, become a better artist of your own personal, inner, deep, whatever's inside you, that school will draw it out. And I'm here to say personally, because I've been doing it for decades, years and years. And I know the other artists, and once in a while I'd peek in the rooms there and see what's happening. And you could just feel, it was the whole place was just filled with that feeling of aesthetics, art, and there was smiles. You could see people when we had a break. You could see great big smiles of, oh my God, what I'm learning, you know. And it's that school, and I think that it should be tough to get into. That there's so many people crowding to it, you know.
Well, you know, I think so. I agree with you 100%. And for me, I mean, it was such a revelation because, you know, I went to art school, but at the time it was, God forbid they teach you anything. You know, I mean, it was, yeah. I think if I had maybe studied commercial art, it would have been a different thing because it would have given you some skills, but I mean, literally nothing. And I remember the first class I took, because it was on the advice of my dad, who had been a student at the Art Students League, although he was in business, not an artist. And I took a life drawing class, and I had taken semester after semester after semester of life drawing. And I learned more in that 1 week than I learned in all those semesters put together. And I was so shocked that there was so much that you actually could learn. Not that you just had to be born with this magic in your hand or in your mind. And so from that, I came to you. I mean, I think it was that very next class that I took, which was the next following year, was from you and a few others. And man, I can't tell you how much for me it was so exciting to learn and and just be around everybody that knew not only about how to think, learn how to think, and be introduced to new artists I'd never heard of that I could look at and see their work. And I don't know, it is, and it continues to be. I still take classes. I still love to be there and still learn.
Well, if I was living down there, I probably would. And what I've discovered there with other artists that have come out and have gone professional, they said that school, and it's the way it is, that school, they would say, that school made me a better me, made me a better artist of my own approach. It drew me out. In other words, they weren't copying or trying to emulate somebody. That they made themselves, it made them better as artists.
It's not a procedural thing. It's not methodical. It is teaching people how to think and giving them the room to be themselves. So I agree.
Well, they find I think the brand new people that come there, I'm sure on the Monday at noon hour when they have the break, they say, "Oh boy," they know that they made the right choice.
Yeah.
And I'm at that point where if somebody asks me to say something nice about whatever it is, and I've been asked that a few times, the Scottsdale School is truly on the top, up in the top of the list.
Oh, man.
Of several things that really are in my heart, truly in my heart, that school. If I was young again, but I'd probably put in another 10 years, just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
You could say I'd do it for nothing, because
careful, they'll call you up. But Harley, as you know, now that you're up there in the north, you may want to come down for a week or two in the warm weather, and I'm sure that they could arrange something that you only have to be there 2 hours a day.
Well,
instead of the 15 or 16 that you used to do.
Oh God, that was something. That was, of course, the borders are locked up.
I know. I think you're more than welcome to come down here. It's us that they don't want anywhere else.
Oh, it's too bad we're going through this.
Hopefully that will change.
We'll always remember 2020, the year 2020, for sure.
Yeah. There's no question about that. But
is there any?
This too shall pass, as they say.
Beg your pardon?
God willing, this too shall pass.
Yeah, it will. It'll be 2021. And do you have classes right now, or are they kind of?
Well, they have open studios and they have some local classes, but people are not wanting to travel so much. The schools is operating on wonderful protocols, and everything's very clean. The class, certainly they're not allowing many people. Everybody's social distancing and they're wearing masks and
sure,
and they're sanitizing. So I think they're doing everything that they can, and we're hoping that people will feel more comfortable to come back in. We understand that people aren't wanting to fly and so forth, but it's not that far a drive from a lot of places.
Right.
So, you just hope that the school will weather through this. So it's struggling like everything, and until people start to feel more comfortable and safe, I'm hoping that, they'll have a lot of bottled up energy and want to come back to live classes, because, the school is doing some virtual classes and things like that, which are a great substitute, but I don't think that they can really match being there and having the full immersive experience. No matter how much you get from it, you still lose when you have a screen. You still lose the energy that flows between people,
totally,
right?
Yeah.
It's just not there. So
that's why I hope that books never disappear.
Yeah, well, especially art books. I mean, Kindles and all are great, but to hold something in your hand is entirely different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that God only knows what's going to be 100 years from now with art, with how they now reproduce everything digitally and so on. But At least I think right now. And I say that I was raised in Moose Jaw and went to school, elementary and high school in Moose Jaw, which I think was a perfect time and a perfect city. And then went into art school back in the late 50s and early 60s, which to me was a perfect time. And I think that I started developing it as an artist at an almost very ideal time of my life back in the 60s, you know, and then of course the 70s and 80s and things just, I mean, if you read my confessions book and so on, there's a number of people have read that and said, you should make a movie of it. And people at a movie company had read the book and they said, no way. They said that Brown's life is much too bizarre and nobody would believe it.